The silence in my house is the loudest sound I know. It's the echo of success that rings hollow in rooms too big for one person. I built a fortune on lines of code, but I couldn't build a life that mattered. That changed on a gray San Francisco afternoon, outside a cafe where I'd just bought a $12 salad I didn't really want. A voice, frail but clear, cut through the city's buzz. "I haven't eaten for days. Can I get some food?" She stood there, a young woman wrapped in layers of worn clothing, her hands shaking slightly. But her eyes, they weren't begging, they were stating a fact. There was a pride in them that stopped my automatic reach for my wallet. It demanded something else. I went back inside and bought her the warmest meal they had. When I handed it to her, I tucked a second sandwich beside it for later. Her fingers, cold against mine, gently pushed the extra food back into the bag. "What I ate today is enough," she said softly. "Tomorrow. We'll see tomorrow." She walked away, and I stood there, a man who solved complex problems for a living, completely dismantled by her quiet acceptance of an uncertain tomorrow. I went back to my glass house on the hill, but I couldn't escape those words. They echoed in the emptiness. I found myself driving past that block again the next day, and the next. I told myself I was just checking, making sure she was okay. But I was drawn there. I learned her name was Lena. We spoke in fragments over a few days. She'd lost a retail job, then her apartment, and just slipped through the cracks. She refused to ask for money. "Hunger is easier than humiliation," she told me once, and the simple truth of it shattered something in me. Then came the night the real cold set in, a damp wind slicing up from the bay. I saw her trying to shield herself with a piece of cardboard against a building's gritty vent. The traffic lights reflected in puddles of oily water near her feet. I sat in my idling car, the heater blasting, and I knew I couldn't drive away. My heart hammered against my ribs as I approached. "I have a house," I said, the words feeling too loud in the dark. "It's empty. You could stay, just temporarily, no strings." It sounded insane even to me. She looked at me with a lifetime of weary suspicion. "Why?" "Because tomorrow shouldn't be something you just have to see," I heard myself say. The drive up to Pacific Heights was wordless. She sat stiffly in the leather seat, staring at her hands. When we walked into the vast minimalist space, she seemed to shrink. I showed her to a guest room, gave her towels, told her to make herself at home. I set a boundary with my own nervousness. "This is your space. No rules." The change began slowly, filling the silence not with noise, but with presence. The smell of toast in the morning. The soft sound of her cleaning the kitchen after I'd made us both eggs. Evenings found us in the living room, the city a tapestry of lights below. She loved old Motown songs. She confessed, one night, a buried dream of becoming a nurse. I found myself telling her about the early days of my company, the loneliness that arrived with the money, how I hadn't had someone to tell about my day in years. One evening, the power went out across the neighborhood. The sudden, utter darkness made the huge house feel small and close. We sat on the floor, the glow from our phones creating a tiny island of light. We talked for hours in that intimate dark, and the last of my walls crumbled. I wasn't a benefactor. I was just a man, listening. I took her to get a proper coat, some clothes that were hers. In the dressing room, she put on a simple, deep green jacket. She turned to the mirror and went perfectly still. Then, silently, tears began to stream down her face. She touched the sleeve, her fingers tracing the seam. "I look like a person again," she whispered. I had to look away, my own vision blurring. That fragile, beautiful thing growing between us felt more real than anything I'd ever built. It was shattered at a farmer's market. I'd stepped away to get us coffee. When I came back, I saw her, frozen, clutching a basket of apples. Two women nearby were murmuring, their glances sharp. "That's the girl Daniel took in, can you imagine?" Probably seeing how much he can get before he wises up. I saw the color drain from Lena's face. The light in her eyes, the light we'd worked so hard to rekindle, went out, replaced by a familiar, devastating shame. She was gone when I got back to the house. The room was spotless, the bed made with military precision. A note on the kitchen counter written on the back of a receipt said, "Thank you for everything. I belong on my own sidewalk, not in your world." Lena. The silence that followed wasn't my old companion. It was a new, aggressive emptiness. It was the ghost of her laughter, the echo of her dreams. The house felt like a museum of a life I'd almost had. I knew, with a certainty that was terrifying and exhilarating, that I could not let this be the end. I had to find her. I searched for days. I combed the streets near the cafe, the shelters, the parks. The city, once just a map of efficient routes, became a maze of aching possibility and crushing disappointment. The fog clung to everything, mirroring the dread in my chest. She had vanished. On the fourth evening, with a cold drizzle painting the sidewalks black, I went back to the exact spot. A last desperate pilgrimage. And there she was. A hunched form in the green coat tucked into the same shallow doorway. Relief and heartbreak warred inside me. I didn't bring food or a plan. I just walked over and stood in the rain. She looked up. Exhaustion had carved new lines around her eyes. "Daniel," she said, her voice flat. "Please, don't." "I'm not here to give you anything," I said. I knelt on the damp concrete, not caring about the suit. I needed her to see my face. "I'm here because you took something." She flinched, wrapping her arms tighter around herself. "I took nothing." "You took my silence," I said, the words raw. "You took my empty rooms and you filled them with the smell of coffee you made for both of us. You took my long, pointless days and you gave me a reason to come straight home. You asked me for a meal, Lena, but you gave me back my life." A sob escaped her, harsh and choked in the damp air. She shook her head, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. "Those women, they were right. This was a mistake. I'm a project to you. Look at me," I said, my own voice breaking. "Do I look like a man who's completed a project? I look like a man who's lost his home, and it has nothing to do with the house on the hill." I reached out slowly and took her cold hand. She didn't pull away. "I was hungry too," I whispered, "for years. I just didn't know how to say it." She stared at our joined hands for a long moment. The city roared around us, but in that doorway there was only a fragile, waiting quiet. "I was so afraid," she finally said, the confession leaving her in a rush. "Afraid to need this. Afraid to need you." "I'm afraid too," I admitted. "But I'm more afraid of going back to the silence." She leaned forward then, her forehead touching my knuckles. A gesture of surrender, of trust. I helped her up. She didn't have a bag to gather. She just had herself. She didn't move back into the guest room. That chapter was closed. She enrolled in community college, aiming for her nursing prerequisites. She got a part-time job at a library. Our home became a real one. A place of shared grocery lists, quiet study sessions at the kitchen table, and arguments over what to stream. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real. It was laundry and deadlines and cheering her on through her first biology exam. It was her holding me accountable when I worked too late. It was love, not as a sudden explosion, but as a slow, steady dawn after a very long night. Sometimes on our balcony overlooking the city, she'll lean into me, her head on my shoulder. The streets below hold both misery and majesty, a city of stark contrasts. We don't talk much in those moments. We just remember. I remember a soft voice on a crowded street. She remembers a hand that didn't just offer food, but offered a way back to herself. Our story began with hunger, but it was answered, not with a single meal, but with a shared feast of second chances, built one honest day, one fragile truth at a time.